Right, well, welcome to the Telsig podcast, everyone. We're joined today by four academics who've written a recent paper entitled Resilient Education, the Role of Digital Technology in Supporting Geographical Education in Ukraine. And lucky enough to be joined by the authors here today. So welcome, Liz, Simon, Daria, and Kate. It's really great to have you all here. We're going to talk mainly about how this collaboration came about, and it would just be great to get your takes on what's behind the article and some of the implications for teaching, because I think a lot of what you've been going through in Ukraine will be of huge interest to the audience, and particularly the way technology has played such a role in the development of education. So we'll get into the weeds on that soon and we'll dive into the article, but we'll first do some introductions. We could get everyone to give us your potted bio and your input to the collaboration and how this came about from your end.
So, hi, I'm Liz Hurrell. I'm in the Department of Environment and Geography at the University of York. And I'm on a teaching and scholarship contract. So I'm really interested in sort of the pedagogy of teaching and learning. And I guess how this collaboration came about. Well, the Environment and Geography Department got some UKRI funding to develop a twin with Kharkiv University. And as part of that, we were sent around a questionnaire about how we could see the department building on this collaboration. And I knew from COVID how important virtual field trips were. So I said maybe virtual field trips might be something that we could help collaborate on. Then some academics from Kharkiv University said they were interested in this. I wasn't in a position to be able to support them, so I passed them over to Simon Hutchinson, who has done a lot of work with Kharkiv and other universities around this. So should I pass over to Simon, who can elaborate on this a little bit more?
Okay, so I think it was late 2022 or early 2023 when Liz put me in touch with Kate and her colleagues in Kharkiv, which is in the far east of Ukraine. And we started a conversation around teaching and the issues around remote learning, etc., because many of their students were dispersed across Europe as effectively as refugees, and there were considerable problems, obviously, with delivering the curriculum. So we were thinking about some of the virtual field trip tools that we've used to support our students during COVID. And we put together some plans. I, with other colleagues, delivered some workshops to train the students to use virtual field trip tools. Katia students produced some amazing field trips on the basis of previous field trips, the digital photos they had, or using their smartphones around the cities in other parts of Europe where they were based. And that was also supported by the Royal Geographical Society, and they put some of that material online for the world to see. Subsequently, we've tried the same approach in Kyiv with geographers there, and also with Daria in Chernivtsi, where there has been some online learning and then back in-person learning. So we developed this approach to allowing students to make their own field trips and staff, which then led in the summer of 2023. We got some funding stimulated by Kate's colleague, Natalia, but it also included Daria and other Ukrainian and Romanian universities through the Central European Initiative. We ran a summer school, and the idea of the summer school was it was hybrid, but we would provide some practical training for staff to learn how to make virtual field trips, to use digital tools, but also a wider community engaged in providing workshop material from the UK, from Czechia, Slovakia, and also students and staff from those countries and also Romania engaged. And then the whole idea was to sort of teach the teachers to try and spread that. And so the paper that we produced really tells that story. But also it was something that I found, it's kind of an epiphany, maybe, in the presentations that Kate and her colleagues and Daria were making. They were saying, okay, this is great, but actually we were already doing a lot of this. We'd done this through COVID. We adapted that because of the war. And we sat back and thought, wow, there's some really fantastic stuff. This is resilient Ukrainians in practice. So there's some really nice, good examples of how you can adapt, how you can change, how you can be resilient, and how you can employ digital tools, but also some of the issues around that, some of the downsides. And what we'd really liked, the article is really to sort of demonstrate that, but also to try and get a wider community involved in maybe supporting academics, students, geographers in Ukraine.
Thanks, Simon. Kate, you're next clockwise on me.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Kate. I will focus on creating virtual field trips. Thanks, Simon and Liz. And I'm adept in education of the challenges posed by the war in Ukraine. My passion is to empower students with practical skills, foster sustainability, and employ innovative teaching methods. My academic work, I participate in international education in New York, in Armenia, in other one projects, and organize events to engage students and our colleagues.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate. Daria, over to you.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Daria from Western Ukraine. I'm a teaching position at the Department of Physical Geography, Geomorphology and Paleogeography. So, of course, field studies, field education is central for our department. So that was the primary background how we met. Yeah, I joined this team in 23, but before we have met on the conferences, Paleo Science conferences with Simon. So that was a great opportunity for us to keep going with online learning, with field trips, because we needed tools for that. Of course, we were in better position than in Eastern Ukraine, so the teaching were in hybrid format, but we have to make this teaching diverse in order for our students to keep empowered and keep excited about the training. So we joined this summer school with Simon and Liz, and afterwards we keep developing our collaboration in different fields of digital tools and resilient education.
Hey, thanks. So important to clarify, you're all geographers by training. You're subject matter experts in the field, literally and metaphorically. Yeah. But the lessons here are we're looking at teacher training, looking at teachers how to use digital tools and how to get the most out of them, which is something I think people from across disciplines will be familiar with and hopefully be able to relate to. But I want to dive into that in a minute, but can you give us some contextual information as to what it's like, or what it has been like over the last few years, teaching in higher education in Ukraine? And you touch a little bit on this in the article. We talk about the damage to physical buildings. I think this is mostly in the Kharkiv University in the east, and there's slightly more in-person education going on further from the front lines. But can you paint us a picture for people who we're only in the UK, I think, especially we get the headlines, but as you know, with sort of jostling for position with all the atrocities that are happening around the world. So, really start from the beginning and give us a picture of educators' roles on a day-to-day basis in a Ukrainian university.
Maybe I start there. The ongoing conflict has had profound impact on teaching, of course. The destruction of infrastructure, like access to practical training sites, and general insecurity, major challenges. Teachers, professors, and everyone in our university, the focus to adapt to the psychological effects of the war on students. Many of them struggle to remain motivated of the face of stress and tragedy, and stability of structure and planning have become almost impossible. And we start train and some master classes here. Simon and some motivate with students and colleagues, and we start a new line, maybe it's for us. Because before we have some photos, some videos, but after the collaboration with Simon, we start a big family maybe, and we understand we're not one in this world.
Yeah. I will, of course, firstly, I would say that everything comes in comparison. So, of course, in Western Ukraine, we were in much better situation. But as the war shows that despite the distances, the war is close to everyone. We had also in the Western Ukraine unexpected, probably for us, for Western Ukraine, it's also a lot of attacks, and we had to get used to the sirens and the warnings. And there were also some damages. But I guess the biggest challenge was this shock and fear that paralyzed us in keeping going in our daily routine education. So the thing was to adapt to this time and I would say as the teacher, the thing was also important to make our students feel safe and to like the pedagogy. I would say this was also the stuff to be with them in these times and to keep them learning, keep them eager to stay in Ukraine. So in Western Ukraine, in the first year we had to turn on totally on online learning, but because of the previous COVID times, we were already prepared for that. So that made this process quite adaptive, flexible for us. But for me as the physical geographer, we had a lot of field trips. So the main limitation for us was not going anywhere in the field. We used to go on fields throughout the whole country, to the east, to the south, to Crimea, even before Crimea was like the main field sport for us to go because of the big diversity, natural diversity of this peninsula. But after 2014, we were limited in that. So we changed the destination to the west. We even went abroad for field trips to Romania, to Poland. But after the war started, we were also limited because male students are not eligible to go outside the country. So it was another issue that we had to adapt. So only mountains, the most remote mountains, were eligible for us, but also because they were close to the border, the access to them was also restricted. But it was only the first year, and afterwards, seeing that it's quite safe, we changed the format to the hybrid one, but we allowed the students to stay outside the country if they already has moved to other countries because of safety issues. So we provided this online format. But now, I don't know if it's good, but in different senses, we get used to all these challenges. And we have gone to the physical format, so we are totally offline now, except of the master students. And so digital technology in this case is quite important for us because we know that we have a lot of limitation as physical geographers in this sense. If we can go, we are not allowed to enter a big space of our country. So using the best of digital tools is a key for us to develop. And in the other sense, it's the great tool for us for students to show that it could be resilient, and nevertheless it could be not less interesting. So because of this international cooperation, it's possible for us. And that is why we are really excited about this international, not only research community, but teachers community that can help us to stay resilient.
You touched on quite a few topics there that we'll return to. Kate, especially your point about student motivation, and there must be some implications with student numbers and whether physically students can study either online or in person. This must be the priorities of the country are shifting all the time. So presumably this plays a role. And please, any of you chip in on that if there's more to add there. But I'd also like to get a picture of the field of geography as well, if I can. There'll be a lot of people listening kind of now realizing that the way you teach geography and what geography is as an umbrella topic is probably very different from a lot of other topics that we talk about on this podcast. Here's everything from STEM to more traditional classroom-based topics and book-based topics. So give us a broad picture of what a geography program looks like. What modules would you be looking at? How much of it is theoretical and how much of it is out on the field and chiming the need for physical presence?
Becoming as independent country, quite young independent country, so we had some chance to develop quickly in this sense, and in, I would say, in this skills that are required for geographers, we also alter a lot during the years. And now, even now, we have another form of changing the content of geography teaching. But we understand that now, as never before, the geography is such a relevant and up-to-date program that integrates a lot of different directions of sciences and so on. So in Ukraine, geography involves social sciences, earth sciences, environmental studies, and regional studies. So it's quite a big mix of theoretical learning, but in our bachelor curriculum, 10% is field modules. So we are focused very much on the field studies. Every year we have a big module of field trips that incorporates all the S sciences like geology, meteorology, geomorphology, geology, and then like complex studies. We have also like economical practice that involves learning regional environmental management and communities need sustainability. So that's also the issues. So in this sense, so physical presence is very important to learn the skills. So that's why we are looking for this comfortable and very easy in use tools that can reflect all the fields that we can't access.
Yeah, Simon, do you want to verbally expand on a couple of those that you've outlined?
It just that in the UK, a geography department would include both human geographers and physical geographers. My understanding is that in the departments, the universities that Kate and Daria work at, they're entirely separate. And so my impression of Ukrainian universities is that there's lots of disciplines and sub-disciplines, and they form their own independent departments, whereas the trend in the UK is almost to go the other way. We aren't a geography department. We're part at Salford University. We're part of the School of Science, Engineering and Environment. And I know that's in common in lots of UK universities. So whereas we're coalescing, those individual disciplines are still apparent. That means that there is a high degree of specialism. That means that there are some really well qualified students and really specialized academics, which is fantastic and a fantastic resource, but also going forward and anticipating the kind of budget restrictions that we're all experiencing and post-war Ukraine will experience, that's also going to, I would imagine, will be a risk. And so the universities managers will be looking for economies of scale, just as they have here. The other thing, when I was sort of researching, when we started working with Kate, was cadastral studies. Cadastral, to Google that and work out what it meant. My understanding is it's something to do with surveying. That sort of practical dimension is, there seems to be a strong practical component that's involved as well. So there are, things that you wouldn't make. Surveying would be within a university department in the UK, but here at Salford, it would probably be in civil engineering, something like that. So it's, on the one hand, geography is broader, but on the other hand, it's more constrained in Ukraine compared to the UK. So it makes working with these guys interesting, but also you can't always make the kind of assumptions that, well, it'll be like us. Actually, it's not, which obviously is something we need to recognize.
Geography programs in our university typically included modules such as hydrology, geomorphology, and natural resource use, environmental. Yes, we are And we use GIS technology, and students develop transferable skills in spatial analysis, environmental planning, and sustainability and other one. But field trips is very important for our geography. Many students now in our university are currently abroad, and it's difficult for all of them to do internships, and funding doesn't allow internships, but field trips funding doesn't not allow, because its basis of these practices, these field trips are destroyed by bombs and other one. And now our education only online, because we haven't a lot of shelter, because we have only online now. But we try next semester, our university try 30% offline. It's a terrible situation nearby our city.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for anybody who kind of isn't really aware of geography and what geography entails and why field trips are important, is that, you know, we can be teaching students about rivers or soils or whatever, but it doesn't really come alive until you go out into the field and start to see it for yourself, or start to test variables within those different components yourself. So the field trip is really, really important for linking together the theory, to bring it to life, really bring that theory to life, but also then to, as Kate said, develop a lot of those practical skills for helping us understand some of the environmental processes that are going on.
Yeah, and there's a point you make in the article, I think, is that geography is a really high stakes subject, because it's going to play quite a key part in the reconstruction of Ukraine post-war, and these are skills that are going to be very much in demand. Obviously, there's a lot of advantages that you've discovered through the shift online, and it's just, this resilience is amazing. The fact that it's such a physical science has stayed active and current, you've managed to go forward. If it ended tomorrow, do you feel that the education you've been able to provide has given students the skill sets that they need?
Yeah, may I? So I think that because of COVID, we have adapted quite early. We have undergone digitalization in our daily life, so that was the issue that was quite easy in these circumstances to be online. But I would say that the main challenge is this physical presence. Because we are humans. I guess it's for COVID also the same issue, that we lost this contact, this close contact to our students. And in some sense, during the war, they are losing their excitement, empowerment, stimulus to learn because of burnout, because of this daily stress. So that's maybe the biggest issue for us. And of course, because we are uncertain of future, we have a lot of migration nowadays. For us also is the challenge to keep young people. It's important for us to have this young population who will be eager to take part in this resilience of Ukraine. So that is another issue that we try to discuss with our students. In professional skills, we've got a lot of advances, of course, because we are in touch with the daily progress. So we are trying the best tools that we can to explain to the students the problems, to even not being present physical, because, of course, we have the biggest issue for us, even for geographers. That's why I said that we are very, geography education is very relevant one, because we have to talk about the sustainability. We are also following this global development goals, and because of war, it's even more challenging for us, but we are looking to the international values. Of course, we are trying this way too. Geography is the key education for this sustainability and resilience, and to solve this problem, these digital tools help us to see what is going on in the combat areas that we don't have physical access, but remotely we can monitor what is going on there and make some analysis, data analysis, remote analysis to show that to the world what is going on. So these skills would be even became better for our students, but physical limitation is the big problem still.
Yeah, Liz and Simon, just sort of pinging back to the UK for a minute, can you paint us a picture of how geography looks in Salford and York and how these departments teach? Do you have parallels with what's going on in the Ukraine? Are you taking advantage of some of these online things, or is it the fact that it's such a physical science that you're still very much in the field? I mean, have you adopted any of the technology and the tools that they're using out in Ukraine for your own courses?
So, yeah, I mean, fieldwork is important in all geography programs. Many programs that have accreditation. And so when we get accreditation, the dimensions of our course, including fieldwork, are part of that. So we take students on both day-by-day field trips, so day field trips across all 3 years of the program, and there are also residential field trips as well. So when in COVID, we couldn't do that, and so many people built virtual field trips. And actually, we've determined that these virtual field trips are also still useful. I still give my students, before we go to the area of the Peak District where we look at landslides, they get the virtual field trip before they go, and some of them access it. More of them access it after they've been, for the bits they've missed, and even more of them access it when we get towards the assessment period. So we use these digital tools to support learning generally, but also to support students in general, but also students with different issues, because through COVID or for other reasons, many students have concerns about engaging with other students, about being in the field. It may be a physical problem, it may be other problems. So actually being able to show them that site through a series of video clips or 360 photos, actually, for a lot of them is really reassuring. So I found that rather than discouraging students to go on field trips, oh, well, I can just look at the virtual version, they actually see it and go, oh, okay, that doesn't look too bad. Oh, okay, that's quite interesting. So we still very much use them to try and support accessibility. Accessibility and inclusion in geoscience in general is a big issue. Many students will come to university from a school background where they haven't had access to field trips because they're expensive. There's risk associated with them. They may not have teachers who feel they can lead field trips. So it can be quite a novel and challenging experience. And actually, I suppose using digital tools to support fieldwork is quite a good way of getting value for money. Rather than you just go on the day and that's it. Actually, you can look at it before you go. You can look at it afterwards. It's a good way. And then maybe you rest that site and go somewhere else, but it's still there available to compare and contrast. And actually, that's what an aspiration that Liz and I have, is that if other staff in other UK universities have the virtual field trips, great examples from the north of Scotland or Mid Wales or whatever, why couldn't those be shared to build a bigger repository of shared field experiences? Okay, they won't be badged University X and used by University Y, but is that a problem? We're all contributing, because I think one of the things I've found really useful working with these guys in Ukraine is being part of that bigger community. It must be, we all remember what COVID was like. Imagine COVID, then a war, how isolating that would feel for both staff. These guys are tired and working hard. And then if students aren't even there, you don't even get that interaction in the classroom. It's that sort of trying to build some kind of community that's really important. So I guess in many ways our programs look across UK universities, probably geography looks fairly similar with different specialisms depending on the staff. They will all meet the general criteria for geography to be a geography program. But yeah, fieldwork is an important component part. But unlike some of the examples I've seen from Kharkiv University, the photos and things that students used to make their virtual field trips of going to the field for 2 weeks, of going and camping. and being out in the mountains, it's in a sense more physically challenging than a lot of our day trips to the Peak District might be. There's some good examples from Ukraine that I use with my students to show what different kinds of field experiences are.
Yeah, and this technology not only create virtual trips, but we create and monitoring some landscape and modeling landscape and special data analysis and making education access to even remote or unsafe conditions. And other one, it's digital tools such as Google Earth and Story Maps and Sentinel-L browser. We use this program and including Simon share for us a new program.
You're talking about ThingLink. It's an education.
Yes,
It's an online platform called ThingLink. Actually, to be fair, ThingLink have been really supportive. They provided extended access to the Ukrainian partner universities. The point is, it's relatively easy to use for both staff and students and really flexible. If you don't like it, you can just change it. You can upload in minutes. You can add tags. You can make a basic virtual field trip in about an hour. Some of the students have made some really good virtual field trips from quite limited resources because they don't have 360 cameras, they don't have drones, they're not actually in the field. But getting students to create them, I think the main thing is it was fun, it was different, it was a bit more engaging, a bit more motivation. But some of the outputs have been really good, and actually some of them I've looked up and thought, oh, I need to ask, how did you do that? Actually, that's a really clever idea. So I'm learning at the same time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so like Simon, we have day trips, and we also have, for every year we have a residential field trip. 2 of those are compulsory residential field trips, and one of them is, the third one is a optional field trip. So they are very much part of our teaching program. In terms of virtual tools, we're still in a development stage because we've just had a massive restructure. So we haven't quite got as far as Simon, I don't think, in terms of development. I started that this summer with a placement student. We went out and did some field videos, just showing some videos on how we sample from a river and how we do some landscape survey. And the idea of that was to support our students in preparation for their field trip. So rather than being as a replacement, they're very much helping them see what they will be doing on the field and kind of getting them up and running a bit faster. And so what we did was we created those for our own students, but we also then shared them with Kate at Kharkiv, so that they could use these field technique videos as well. So like Simon was saying, we're very keen on trying to share resources, particularly in UK higher education. Resources are very limited at the moment. And I think the more sharing that we can do, and we can show that we can do it via these different platforms, the better our education is, I guess, really. We're also thinking a lot in our department about the sustainability of field trips. Again, not seeing virtual field trips necessarily as a replacement, but if it's going to enable our students to be able to engage with people and countries further afield, then that can help us address the sustainability challenge. We're not then flying students out to these places, but we might be able to bring those places into our own teaching and learning. And I guess, again, reflecting on the financial situation in higher education in the UK, field trips are expensive. And although I don't think we've cut any field provision, I guess there's always that worry or that concern that they might cut them in the future because they are so expensive. Hiring a coach is very expensive. Also, again, thinking about like today, we got 50, 60 mile an hour winds. Having these kind of videos or these virtual field trips are also a useful backup for if we cannot go out into the field, that we've said we're going to go out and then suddenly the forecast means that we cannot go out. At least we've then got a backup to be able to still engage students with the field environment, even if they're not actually physically getting out there.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to you talking, because we're just describing geography to an applied linguist, just sort of giving away my voice. It's kind of, you teach a linguistics course and it will be the same wherever you are. And obvious when you say it, but obviously teaching geography in the Peak District or the Pennines is going to be completely different to the kind of things that you're focusing on in, the Slovakian mountains, and it's so locally relevant. So it's the aspect of collaboration, it seems to make so much more sense. In many courses, I guess, where you study just doesn't matter. You wouldn't necessarily be able to infer the kind of things that you were studying because of the location. But with geography, you can the sharing becomes so much more important because you can study things in respective locations that you simply can't study elsewhere.
I think we keep talking about the work for geographers as it is for biologists and geologists and other disciplines that have field science. But for the students, it's often the thing that they remember looking back. And it's the thing that sort of we try and embed the field trips so that it's quite good for getting students talking and engaging and sharing and participating. It's good for student retention. So that's the issue that in Ukraine they had. I mean, I know Daria in the conference presentation, she was talking about actually you put together some little video clips, some almost like podcasts and YouTubes and things to try and just give people, the students, that sense. And that's one of the issues that Kate has in Kharkiv is that the students they're not on campus, they're remote. And, lots of students will remember the YouTubes that they got, and we all remember the Teams meeting that we had, and that's fine. So, if it's blowing a gale, then it's a great way to have a meeting. But on the other hand, it's a great way to talk over distances. But actually, it's not the same as being in the same room. You need that blended, you need that hybrid, you need that human interaction. But actually, weirdly, that's also kind of where virtual field trips are useful, because if you've got a student and they're sick, they have freshest flu, they can't come. They're one of the 50 students who can't engage. You don't actually want them on the bus giving everybody germs. If they can't come, that's okay. But if there's a virtual version, any follow-up activities, they haven't completely missed the party. They won't have had that field experience, but they can still see the site. They can still be embedded within a group. They can still engage. So what we're doing is trying to promote using digital tools alongside the in-person experience for people who can't be there ever or can't be there for that particular occasion. And just as, they might be, it's relatively easy for us to get to our local sites. We tend to use, because we're in Greater Manchester, sites within, nobody wants to sit on a coach for more than 2 hours, but actually there's some, we could have virtual field trips remotely in glacial environments or in desert environments. It opens up the world. It gives, a better experience, a wider sense of experience. So virtual does do many things, but it's by no means instead of, it's definitely in alongside as well as. That's the key thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with Simon. Yeah, for us, field trips is a lot about social skills. As we are going for 3 days or for a week in the wild environment. So here, of course, the best qualities of humans will appear. So when we ask graduates what they remember the most or what they cherish the most from their education, they always remember the field practices. Because even if they haven't understood some theory, some minerals or some weather phenomena or some landscape processes, so in the field they had the best chance to understand that. So that was a really great experience. If about the digital tools, I would say for us it's also a helping hand, because we've got a really nice framework to do these field trips. The preparation for these field trips, that students are already aware what they would expect there and can already prepare for some knowledge that they need to have in order to go further, to understand deeper in the field processes. In this field, we also try to cover all the diversity of the landscape. So that was the main issue for us. Because Ukraine is quite a big country, we had all the diversity of the landscape, from mountains to flat areas to sea coast. So we had a really great chance to see all this diversity and to students explore the differences that are happening in natural processes. So that is the challenge for us to show that in the best way this. But yes, before, in the COVID times, we made a lot of videos. Personally, I with my colleagues, we launched the YouTube channel. So we started to film like weather station or some natural landscape, diverse places, in order to show to our students. So on the other hand, while students were stayed at homes, they can show us their places. So that was also an interesting exchange for us. They learned to do some field sampling by themselves, like collecting some minerals, some plant species, or making some essential weather observation using some easy tools. So this was also another point of our collaboration between students and teachers. I think these digital and offline tools work the best together. So we are hoping that we can develop them together in future too.
Really starting to feel that I've had a missed opportunity with my education, spending all of it in the classroom. I could have been out on field trips in the mountains and getting stuck into nature. So it's you talked a lot about various platforms and software that have been really useful in keeping everything using digital technology to keep us all alive. You mentioned Google Earth a lot in the article, and I'll come back to that in a sec. But ThingLink, I think that's something that I think a lot of educators will be familiar with. I mean, we use it even in classroom-based teaching. It's great for just, it's the one, I haven't used it for a while, but I think it's the one it turns anything into a portal. Is that right? And you can just kind of turn a visual map into something that guides you through various stages.
It's a piece of educational software. It's an online platform, and it's a way you can upload photos, video, 360 photos, 360 videos, anything and everything, and then you tag it. So you can say, okay, here's a map. Right, what does it look like at the top of the mountain? Click on the map at the top of the mountain. It will then open another image. You can get a 360-degree image. You can add labels to label the rock types, for example, soil layers, and then you can move down to the bottom of the mountain. It's a digital visualization tool. It's software that's relatively easy to use. It's very intuitive. It's made by educationalists for education. It's something that's quite flexible and adaptable. You don't plan the course and then make something. Somebody else in the audiovisual department makes it, and then it's set in stone. Teachers can make it, students can use it, and if you don't like it, if you want to change it, click, it's changed, and then you share the link.
Yeah, I would add that because of this, because we are like in space, so space for us is very important. So ThingLinks provide us with this space frame, I would say, and to see that in the spatial context, so we can find all the components of the landscape throughout this ThingLinks maps and add all the tools. For me, it's also important because you can add some transits to some out resources, so you can save it as the guide for learning some topics, some modules, or even the guide through the space. So that's also for us quite interesting.
And talk a little bit about Google Earth now, because I think Google Earth. It's probably something everybody knows. I think it's nearly 20 years old now. I think it came out about 2005, 2006, but presumably it's significantly advanced beyond what it was. I think for most people, once they found their house, they sort of lost interest and moved on. But I've heard anecdotally it's light years ahead of what it was. So can you talk us through some of the capabilities of Google Earth now? What does it enable you to do? How fine-grained does the detail on Google Earth? How does it let you explore landscapes?
Yeah, despite the lack of physical access to field locations, it's possible for us using this program.
I would add also that, just quite recently that Google is quite good for making even survey. In Ukrainian reality, it's very nice because we need this awareness of what is going in different parts of Ukraine. So as we checked with our students, it's a good opportunities to make survey even for like different classes of surfaces and changes in these surfaces, like forests, like when we had the damage of the Kakhovka Dam. It was also the possibility for us to monitor the changes after the water has gone from the reservoir and to discover how much changes has happened over this year. So I would say that over the years, the Google Earth has become more detailed. The resolution is impressive.
One big advantage is it's free, and there's global coverage. There's also effectively a timeline function, so you can look back. It will take you automatically, not necessarily to the most recent image because there may be cloud cover. It'll take you to the best image, but you can go forward and back in time. Not a long period of time, but you can start to look at change over time. With the online version, so there's different versions you can download, but you can then start and put the landscape into 3 dimensions up to a point, and then you can tilt and rotate, so you can start to look at landform features from different angles. And then there's quite a nice little function called Google Earth Project, so you can tag the location, add some information, and then tag another location. So you can then give somebody that link, and it will say, okay, take you to site 1, little bit of information, an external link, and then it will take you to another place. But I think what Kharkiv in particular have done is they use that as a source of information. And then Vlad, who's not here, is a specialist in remote sensing and GIS. So they use that as raw data and then start to analyze that further. And there's been I've seen some of his work, which is really, so the war obviously is awful and restricts everything, but there's also some really cool examples that Kate's worked on in terms of impacts on water level of local water bodies, and also damage from munitions, etc., on forest cover. Fires developed from that. So they're also sort of turning it around and using some of the consequences of war as learning examples for student activities. But Google Earth has come on a long way, and you can also start to dip into Google Earth Engine. And there's a lot more you can do. You can sort of lift the bonnets and look underneath, and with the appropriate training, then there's a huge amount that you can do.
Within Google Earth as well, you can do some very, very simple data analysis. So you can draw transects and it gives you an elevation profile. So then you're not just looking at this 2D image, you can actually then kind of picture what it's like in an elevation profile. And then you can also do some very basic, we call them polygons, like we can draw squares around things. And when we're thinking about doing analysis through time, you can then look at the same square and you can do very basic measurements in Google Earth as well. So I guess as geographers, we often have access to other packages. So things like ArcGIS, and then we can also have access to some satellite images. So I guess in a way, Google Earth is it's free, it's open access, but often universities might subscribe to packages that give them more sophisticated tools for analysis as well. So I guess there's different levels of these tools that you can have. But I think the big thing about Google Earth is that it's free and so accessible to everybody.
Hey, I don't think you mentioned explicitly in the article, but I was going to ask about this. I'm conscious we're up against the clock, so I'll just keep this short and we'll get on to collaboration opportunities and ways in which people can contribute. The final question about the tech I just had was about virtual reality specifically. I mean, we've had people on this podcast before talk about how higher education is really now making use across a range of disciplines of virtual reality, and it's not the natural sciences and the STEM fields that you normally associate it with. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if you referenced VR specifically here, but is that something that you have messed with much in terms of like students get access to terrains via headsets and packages like Blender that create 3D landscapes? Is that things that you've explored?
Yes, the barrier is always money.
Yeah.
So the virtual field trips, I talk about visualization tools rather than virtual reality tools, because actually basically a collection of 360-degree photos and video, etc. It's the best way of remotely accessing that environment. I spent a lot of time talking to some of my colleagues who do VR, and a lot of the games engine technology, Unreal, for example, is getting more and more accessible. So we have had some discussions about using Meta and having an immersive experience with the headset on at some of the field sites for which I've got virtual field trips. The issue is it takes a long for somebody who's familiar with the technology, you need somebody who's familiar with the technology. You need access to the technology to build that VR environment. The thing is, then that VR environment is good for that environment. And so the demos I've seen, it will start to look like the real landscape until you look down, and then you realize it's horribly pixelated. So using ThingLink and other things like Google Earth, it's accessible. It's not the most convincing all the time, but it's something that anybody and everybody can use. But sure, VR will be the next thing. But if, like me, you wear glasses, then the headset is not nice. The headsets are expensive, but everybody has a phone. Well, not everybody. Most people have a smartphone. Lots of people have laptops. You can, get a similar experience. So it's that technology is available and will become increasingly available. But at the moment, there's barriers in terms of the cost and time for making those VR experiences, and then having the kit to experience those VR experiences in terms of having the headset, etc. But yeah, it's something that we're exploring, but it's something down the line.
Yeah, that was the point that this is a podcast I did with Sam a little while ago. My assumption was that it would be too expensive. It's just beyond the reach. And because I was thinking of MetaQuest headsets and everything, he was really saying that the barriers are coming down and that simpler solutions like phones in a set would be bringing things to within the reach of most, mortal budgets.
I think the key barrier though is the development cost to actually make a bespoke. So, okay, this is my site. It's having someone to have the time to build the virtual environment for that landslide or glacial environment or whatever. If it was something that was then hosted the game, and then that game would be sold to hundreds, thousands, millions of people, then it would be really cool and it would be really good because they would make the money back. Being able to just say, okay, this year we're going here, somewhere in the Peak District. Next year we're going somewhere in Ukraine. It's exploring how you would do that so that it's worth it's cost effective. And I know, so we have there are examples. For example, University of Chester, they have a little VR simulation of sea level rise along the North Wales coast. So it's a VR of what you would experience if you're one of the static caravan campsites along the North Wales coast with the sea coming in. You put on the headsets and you experience, but it's a few minutes. It's a very constrained environment, and it's okay. This is what might happen. The caravan's floating away, but it's not. It's real enough to give a level of information. I wouldn't say it was realistic, but it's in the developmental stages.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that does develop.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts that you can do with, digital visualizations and things. But we kind of observed during COVID is that you've got to have a purpose. It's got to have a reason. How are you actually going to enhance learning by doing that? And I think particularly in geography with virtual field trips, it isn't necessarily just about the looking and seeing. It's also kind of that observing and analysing. Can you couple your virtual field trip with real life data that students can then go and analyse and get really thinking about that environment? So I'd be really interested to see how VR goes, but I think it's really, really important that we just don't get caught in the trap of, we can do this, so we can do it, but should we do it because is it actually going to enhance learning, or are we just doing it because it's cool? So I think I'm always kind of a bit wary of some of the new stuff because ultimately you can sometimes hand students a tool and you say, I've made this virtual field trip. But if they don't really understand what they're supposed to get from it, or they come away not sure what they've got from it, then it's not enhancing learning at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perennial concern. I think everyone across disciplines is using technology in their teaching and learning. They're grappling with, is this just novelty of the new, or is this actually adding something to the teaching? So things I wanted to get to a really important point here, which was there were just ways in which people can contribute. And you've mentioned collaboration and the importance of collaboration. And obviously there's resources there that people will be building. And it's really great to get these networks in touch with each other. A lot of our audience will be learning developers, learning designers, people who create materials from not necessarily subject matter experts in geography, but with the ability to create resource banks and to take material and present it in quite an engaging way. So is there any ways in which people with these kinds of skills, whether it might be time or even like charitable donations looking towards reconstruction in Ukraine and looking at a post-war period, what are the best ways in which these people can contribute? And we'll put links to any recommendations that you have for portals in the show notes to this. For anyone listening, what are some pieces of advice you could give for getting involved and contributing and collaborating with people internationally?
Okay, so of course, as I said, we are in great way here in Ukraine here in Ukraine because of this international support, because having the resource here. And for geographers, it's the key to have this space before us. And we see this environment not only as nature, but also the environments that makes us peaceful. So the lots of senses that even nature makes us recover from all the stresses that we have. So for me, the big sense is in preserving the environment. So yeah, in the last year, I've been involved in this initiative of creating some transboundary nature parks where we can model this resilient environment, cross-border environment with Romania, for example, where we have remote communities, and we can provide these models for peaceful, sustainable communities, and as the chance to show that despite the war we can be peaceful and we can provide the place for people to live sustainably. So I would say that the great issue is to help us with these tools to preserve these places. To also another issue is to recover or demine the territory that we have. And we are aware that would make a lot of time for us to recover, but for this recover, for make this space safe is also another issue for us. So there are a lot of national programs. Of course, we have the guide, I would say, the peace guide that encompasses, if I'm not mistaken, 11 areas, and one of them is safe education and also environmental policy. So to this compact, there is a lot of NGOs that are working with communities, and they are open to this collaboration. For us as educators and scientists, we appreciate very much this international community where we could be heard and could be seen. And for us, it's a chance to show that we are still here, we are still in Ukraine, that Ukraine is a big European country which values European values. So for us, it's very important to stay in course to the West, to show that we are trying our best to be with a part of that community. So for us, the main thing is this collaboration to be supported, not only financially, but I would say with informational resources, as Simon and Liz do all this time for us, providing the best technologies that we can use, providing, I would say, even this experience for students that they can't go abroad or can't go to the field trips. In this sense, using these virtual trips, we can show them how the world is, how a lot of processes are happening in nature, not going outside. So for us, it was the idea with Simon to create this big community of knowledge and resources that could be shared between us. Some manuals for teachers to teach online or to teach hybrid learning. So this is also about the community, the international community, where we could show Ukraine, where it could be seen, and in turn we can use the best of the world experience.
Now and post-war, the education system is expected to integrate lesson learning during the conflict, during the war, especially digital education and virtual field trips and hybrid learning will likely remain key components. Emphasis will be placed on rebuilding institution, training expert for reconstruction, of course, and fostering international collaboration. There are significant opportunities for international scholars to support Ukrainian education. They are included creating and sharing digital materials, offering experience in rebuilding programs, and facilitating joint research projects, and of course some equipment for us.
Yeah, I think the teacher training, Daria, that you mentioned, and obviously the resource bank as well. Fantastic ideas. I think these are already up and running for other charities and for other teacher training opportunities. People could volunteer and donate time. And if they are experts in resource building as well, there are banks and things that they could contribute to there.
I just, in terms of Liz and I are always looking for other funding opportunities. There are funding opportunities out there for research. They're less apparent, less prevalent for teaching. I think if anybody is interested in contributing, in trying to get involved in supporting Ukraine, then there's probably somebody on your campus who is doing some work. There's probably someone on your campus who is Ukrainian. So reach out and find out what they're doing, because actually it's about making the connections and reaching out and breaking down some isolation is a really useful thing to do. But in reaching out, they may be in a different discipline, but if you're a geographer and you're reaching out to an engineer, they will know some geographers and vice versa. So actually just talk to your colleagues in your home university and see what collaborative activities there already are. But I think what's really important, and the thing that Liz and I keep doing, is writing about this, speaking about this at conferences, just don't letting people forget, and keeping in touch. So I'm periodically always bothering Daria and Kate with stupid comments and photos of snow. They've never seen snow in Ukraine, obviously, but just messages, just to keep in touch, and then exploring funding opportunities, whatever comes up. The hit rate is going to be low, but we'll keep trying. But I think that would be my best advice: is reach out, get in touch, but maybe do it through, if there's any established links, because a lot of the groundwork will already have been done, possibly.
Yeah, I think I just to build on Simon's point, I think like you were saying earlier, Phil, about the war in Ukraine, in the UK, we only see kind of headline figures. And I don't think I was really kind of aware until, talking to Kate and Daria and people at the summer school that, education is still going on, that our colleagues in Ukraine are still educating their young people. And that must be very, very difficult. And I think just raising that awareness that the education is still going on, and wherever we can support them in that, I think would be a good thing, really. Because I can't even imagine what it'd be like to continue education during a war. But it's really, really important. I think they're educating the future of Ukraine. So it's really vital work that they're doing. So yeah, I think that was part of the point of the paper. And then we did a press release. We're doing this podcast is just to say to people, we still have colleagues out there still working against all the odds to provide and continue to provide an education. And I think that's a really important message for people to be aware of.
What are the travel opportunities like? Do you guys get to, I don't even know how restricted travel is in Ukraine now. Presumably there are some parts that are more accessible than others. Do you guys get, Simon and Liz, do you get the chance to go? Have you physically been there yet? Or?
There's no way my university would sign off. I'm not as brave as Daria and Kate anyway, but there's no way they would sign off without exceptional reasons, just because of the insurance, just because of the exceptional risk. But I'm coming as soon as I possibly can, because it looks to be a beautiful landscape. And, Kate's got bees and massive amounts of honey. When Daria lives, there's the fantastic mountains. So we've got plans, but most of the traffic has been in the opposite direction. And in fact, while we were speaking, I was telegramming Kate about a possible conference opportunity. So when we had the summer school in Romania, we had that in Romania because they're a Central European state and they got the funding through a colleague. But it was relatively close. Bukovina is in northeast Romania and close to the Ukraine border. So Daria popped over the border, and Kate's, how many days? 14 hours on a train, was it, to come across from the east of Ukraine?
Approximately.
14 hours. But that was Kate and Daria, because of, basically, if you're a guy, then unless you've got exceptions because of your age or other characteristics, not coming.
Actually, the airspace is totally closed in Ukraine, so we can't go abroad from Ukraine by plane. But in my case, I'm near to the border with Romania, so that was the opportunity for us to develop some activities like summer school and some research collaboration, go into Romania. So there we could meet with Simon and Liz, and so these neighboring countries also provide us great support. In Ukraine, we get used to it. So that we still travel a lot in Ukraine. We are going to Kiev. In Kiev, people are still like, because it's capital, we still like arrange our affairs there. So yeah, people get used to that. And even students, yeah, also get used. So they become more mobile through the years because like I would say it's also because maybe in some sense because of field trips, they get this essential skills of surviving, like in case that some imagine will happen. So I would say that's also part of this, but we become more brave in traveling because we expected that it would end very soon, but you see it's going and going. And we are aware that we have to live, have to learn, how to work, have to develop. So despite all these obstacles, we, as even physical geographers, we are returning to the fields where we can do that.
When we were on the summer school, we had a practical day when we went up into the hills and we were using GoPros, etc. And so halfway up the hill, Daria and the Chernovitzy crew basically said, "Okay, we're going." So, "What's wrong? Where are you going?" So, "No, we have to go back because we have to pack, because we have to drive to the border, because we have to get back before curfew." Oh, okay. But they then missed Kate finding all the bolitas. So if you tell Ukrainian people in the field, they go crazy for fungi, probably like Poles. So I was very brave, and I ate some. But she found these fungi, I prepped them. They were fantastic. But it's just that reality of, okay, we're having it was a beautiful day. You're in the beautiful mountains, but these guys have got to go back to a country at war, to get back before the curfew. And similarly, I'm messaging Kate via Telegram. So, we're in the field today. Here's a photo. And she says, "Okay, I hear this nasty noise. What is it?" "It's a drone. It's a surveillance drone." Okay, you'll have to delay the word I used in response to that, but that's their reality. And again, we're writing this paper, but she can't get back. She's the night in the shelter because it's too late to drive back to home because of the curfew. That's the reality of Ukraine. And I think we forget that because I've never been in a war. I'm a lucky generation.
Yeah, there's no shortage of things that we take for granted. I think that's for sure. And a quick scan of the international headlines on any given day is a stark reminder. Is there anything that we haven't touched on in the paper that you'd like to just flag or expand on before we call time?
I always say that because of these colleagues, of this huge international support, we are still empowered to live in Ukraine, and we still believe in Ukraine. So by this, I want to thank you to all the colleagues abroad who, like Simon said, just message is very important for us. We are sure that we are Europeans. And our case is the case like a chance to show that we can develop despite everything. And first of all, that we are humans, but we are strong humans if we are together. So thank you, all the Europeans that are with us.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we're actually Europeans as well. Despite some noises you might hear to the contrary from time to time, the collaboration that you get really makes you feel that these artificial boundaries that we place between institutions and nations they really exist only in the mind. Thank you guys so much for being so generous with your time. This has been a really great conversation.
Well, thank you for organising us, and thank you, Daria, Kate, for coming. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, everybody. I know it's really nice to have a conversation and see Kate and Daria again.